Michael Rubenstein. So a couple weeks ago, I was in Atlantic City. I took my brother there for his birthday. And the idea was I was going to take him, he's a big Jerry Seinfeld fan, go and hear Jerry do stand-up comedy, basically, and have a nice dinner. On the way out of the casino, I remembered something, my grandmother's lucky number, number 11. And so what I decided to do is I went right up to the roulette wheel. There were some people standing around it. And I said, I want to put a bet down, a bunch of money on number 11. And the croupier looked at me and said, are you sure you just want to go on 11? I mean, normally people spread their bets around a little bit. I think he felt I probably had never been to a roulette table before. And I said, no, I want it all on 11. And the people next to me at the table said, why do you want to go in on 11? I said, well, it's my grandmother's lucky number. I'm going to see what happens. They said, well, if he's in on 11, we're in on 11 too. So we're standing at the roulette table, big stack of chips on 11, and nothing else on the table. Spins the wheel, and of course it hits 11. Everyone's jumping up and down and excited, feeling great about how lucky we got. Person next to me is thanking me. They've been losing money all night, and they just made it all back in one spin. And my sister-in-law's in tears. Everyone's so happy. It was a great moment. And I got lucky. It felt great to get lucky. And I think you can see all the chips falling down on number 11. Last year we talked about Bach bucks. Now these are ruby chips. But basically, it felt great to get lucky. But here's the thing. The odds of that happening, about 1 in 37, right? And that's about the payoff you get in roulette. Now here's a question. We're all trying to build great big ad tech businesses. Maybe you've read recently, what are the chances of building a $1 billion business from scratch in ad tech or any of our spaces? Any guesses? 1 in 1,000, 1 in 5,000? Well, according to First Round Capital, one of our investors, the chances of building a $1 billion business from scratch are about 1 in over 16,000 and change. And with those kind of odds, you don't really want to rely on luck to get the job done. You want to rely on something else. And we're all in, all of us, on ad tech. We're all in on our companies, right? Companies like First Round Capital, they can spread their risk and their investments across dozens and dozens of investments at the same time, which is what they do in order to maximize the chances of payout. But for us, we're all in. We're all in on 11. We're all in on that one number, and we really need it to work. Some people here are especially all in. I know that, I don't know if Terry's here, but I heard that he's got a non-refundable down payment on a super yacht that, it's really got to hit. But I think it's the truth for all of us, which is we really need to figure out how to make smart bets to maximize our chance of success. And I think it leads to a key question, which is, do we want to rely on being lucky, or do we want to rely on being great? And it's a hard question to answer, actually. I mean, I've been really sort of entertained the last couple weeks. A lot of people have been talking about IPOs in the ad tech space. Very hot topic. Well, here's a chart that shows Rocket Fuel's stock price over the last week or so, or last couple weeks since it went public. And you can see there's some ups in there, ups in there, there are some downs in there. And the question that everyone's talking about is, are they great or are they lucky? And the truth is, if you ask them, I'm sure they say they're great. And if you ask a lot of other people, maybe they say they're lucky. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But I think that's the case across the market right now. And I think that if you look at our space in general also, it's really hard to know if even the moves we've made are because of luck or because we're actually that good. I mean, this is the growth of the RTB space in the US over the last several years. And so what you'll see is the waterline, the benchmark, is basically around 70% growth this year in the industry. So that means if you're having a great year and growing 50% year over year, you're losing share. And so it's really hard in that kind of environment to understand what you're doing works and how much is just getting pulled along with a tide that's helping all boats rise. Now for me, when I'm trying to figure out anything in business, I go first to Oprah. And she had a quote that I thought was great. She said, for me, luck is preparation meeting the moment of opportunity. And I think what she's saying there basically is you can't necessarily control your luck, but if you prepare and you make smart bets and smart investments, you might just find yourself getting very lucky. And so with that, what I prepared today is built on BuzzFeed. I've probably been reading a little bit too much lately, but the 8 pieces of advice or tips or insights that I would offer to ad tech companies or any other companies for making future bets and greatness, basically. And what qualifies me to give this? Well, I've had a front row seat in a lot of interesting situations in this industry over the last several years. I had a front row seat at DoubleClick when that company was big, and then when it had difficulties, and then when it came back. I had a front row seat at Google and launching its very successful business in display advertising. And I've obviously had a front row seat here at AppNexus as well. And so as we're going into 2014, we're thinking right now about how to place bets that are going to benefit us for this year and beyond. And I know that everyone here is thinking about the same things as well. And so I hope that some of the things I share today might provide some food for thought or give you a little bit of help along that way. So let me get started. Number 1, great companies do their homework. And I don't mean that they're just reading the industry trades and understand what's happening in the industry. I mean they really do their homework. If you knew the level of market research and analysis that Google does on this industry in areas that they are probably competing with many companies here, you would be astounded. I mean, understanding how money flows, where to, who's got competitive advantage, how to disrupt it, like all of the analysis you could ever imagine doing, that body of work exists, and lots of companies do it, including us at AppNexus. And I think great companies do their homework. The problem with just reading industry headlines or trades is they're all over the place, and they generally lag reality by some significant margin. I mean, we see it in the press. Yahoo, misses earnings. Why? Programmatic. AOL beats earnings. Why? Programmatic. The industry is growing explosively. Magna Global is forecasting that. And yet at the same time, people are calling peak display, the eradication of the cookie, significant changes in the landscape. The bottom line is staying on top of the industry is something you have to do as a regular habit. And something that I've seen great companies do. Even if you did your homework a year ago, the landscape has changed so much now that you have to throw that work out. Who would have anticipated Publicis and Omnicom? Who would have anticipated the astounding success of House of Cards and Netflix as an emerging platform for consumers? Or the success of Facebook in mobile? Or the moves Google is attempting with the creation of an ad ID? Any of these things really shake up the landscape and change the game, and you've got to understand how it impacts you and your business. Number 2, focus wins. Focus wins, focus wins, focus wins. I worked for a CEO named David Rosenblatt, brilliant guy at DoubleClick, and he drilled this into my head. And basically what this means is we all have areas of competitive advantage. Sustainable competitive advantage, or what differentiates us, is the thing that really obsesses me, that I'm thinking about almost all the time. And I know many of you are thinking about the same thing too. Where does your differentiation come from? The point of it was figure out what you're good at, figure out what you're uniquely great at, and go deep and focus on that more than anyone else. And you have a fighting chance of creating a sustainable competitive advantage. And I think that if we think about the differentiators and what really can differentiate companies, there's really not that many things. I think we tend to overcomplicate it. You have unique relationships that no one else has. You have a unique data asset. You have a unique analytics platform or something like that, a unique way to produce insights or performance or optimization. Even that is really, really tricky to create differentiation out of. And technology is a really interesting one. A lot of people here think that having technology is a differentiator. It isn't always. Very often, technology is about helping you unlock some other competitive advantage or differentiator in your business. Now, I think I've started to see a change in that, but even today, I see a lot of people confusing having technology with having competitive advantage. Okay. Number 3. Exits do not equal greatness. So I think in our industry, and maybe in every industry, we have a habit, probably a bad habit, of celebrating exits a little too much. At DoubleClick and Google, we bought a great number of companies over the years, many, many companies. Some of those companies were great, category leaders. Some of those companies were the worst companies in their category, and we were buying them for some IP or maybe even acquiring the talent. There's not necessarily a signifier of anything great happening in an acquisition. And I think the same can be said really for public markets. And by the way, on the subject of acquisitions, think about all the money that's been spent on acquisitions by the portals over the years. Where is that market cap value, those billions and billions of dollars, in the market cap of those companies? It makes me wonder sometimes if portals have a secret room that they don't tell us about, where they take ad tech companies after they buy them and just vaporize them. But I think that the public markets are the same. Today ad tech companies are hot. At some point, probably in the not too distant future, they won't be. For about a decade, they weren't. And you couldn't even contemplate going public as an ad tech company. And so today, I think it's really important to, and on that subject, I think the reality is it is very difficult to really control your exit anyways. When I think about DoubleClick, it took a long, long time for Google to finally come around and decide that they needed to own the company. I think the reality is that it's very difficult to control your exit. It's very difficult to focus on pleasing investors who may not even understand the business when so many of us here in the industry are living and breathing it every day and still grappling with it. And so I think the focus on greatness is something that is in your control. The focus on exit isn't necessarily. Number 4, understanding adjacencies and inevitabilities. This is a bit of a mouthful, but I'll make it simple. Just because a market appears to be adjacent and looks alluring doesn't mean that you should go there. That's, I think, one of the big challenges that we face as an industry. One of the litmus tests, I think, that's really helpful when assessing whether an adjacency is something that you should pursue is your phone ringing off the hook right now from your customers asking you, demanding that you invest in that adjacency? If they are, then it's something you should look at. But if you still can't explain how you're going to transfer or unlock your competitive differentiation that we spoke about before in that new adjacency, then you just shouldn't do it. There's lots and lots of companies that have the mentality of, we should expand into some new vertical because it's there, or because that would allow us to get the bigger share of wallet. Well, that's not always the way the market wants you to think. And so I think the lesson here is, and we made this mistake many times at DoubleClick over the years, I think the lesson here is that just because you want to enter into a new adjacency doesn't necessarily mean the market wants it that way. The last thing I'm going to say on this subject is that sometimes things might appear to be an adjacency, and really they're an inevitability. What do I mean by that? I really mean that if you don't go invest in those areas, there's an existential threat to your company, and the company is going to die. And so one of the areas that we've talked and thought a lot about in that area, and we're going to talk more about today, is mobile. And I think you're going to hear from people like Paul Palmieri and Brian Lesser and Brian O'Kelly speak a little bit later about whether mobile is really an adjacency or whether it's an inevitability, both for us as a company and for everybody here. Okay, number 5. Master complexity. So I talked before about focus is really needed to win. But if focus wins and you're moving into adjacencies, you're necessarily distracting yourself. So how does that work? How do you still win if your focus is dispersed? And this is a really complicated question. And it's actually, the way you answer this question is probably the single greatest determinant of whether you're going to succeed in a new area of investment or not. If I look at what happened in traditional media, right, when newspapers and magazines were being disrupted, very oftentimes what they did was they hired a digital person and said, okay, you go figure it out. And that didn't really work. And they were criticized for not investing across the board, going all in on digital. On the other hand, when I was at DoubleClick and we started the ad exchange business, that's exactly what we did. We just created a simple silo. That was the ad exchange group. We incubated the business, and then once it succeeded, we folded it into the business. The alternative approach is what Mark Zuckerberg did at Facebook. He said, we're going to be mobile first. We're going to invest everything mobile, and that's going to be the business strategy. That's how we're going to win in mobile. And you can see the results there. Those results have won. Incredible attention. They've built a very exciting business in mobile. And so I think the way that you answer that question is going to be very specific for every individual person and every individual company here. It comes down to a lot of factors. But the decision you make about how you distribute your focus and how you focus your efforts on these new bets is of critical, critical importance. Now, the bottom line is, though, no matter which direction you go, your company is going to get more complex. It's just a fact. Going from doing one thing to many things is an incredibly complex thing to pull off. You start developing matrices. You start having multiple aspects of the businesses that you care about at once, across multiple focus areas. I mean, it gets really, really complicated. The bottom line is, we talked about before, just going from being a startup to getting here, where so many of you are today, is incredibly difficult. But going from here to having multiple business lines, multiple bets, multiple focuses simultaneously is even more complicated. The good news is, if you take it head on and you master it, you can ultimately one day build a company that knows how to run 10 businesses simultaneously, if that's what you want to do. Okay, next one, fail fast. No one bats 1,000. Every bet has its ups and downs. Even in this programmatic space, which is a stunning success, stunning overnight success, there are 10 years plus of failed businesses, pivoted businesses, all kinds of things that had to happen in order to get us to this place right now where we're actually going mainstream. And so I think the key is, along the way, there are so many different Band-Aids that need to be ripped off quickly. And I think one thing I've seen from successes consistently is not being afraid to rip those Band-Aids off when they need to be. Number 7, partner smart. Nobody does it alone. Not even AppNexus. We partner for tons of stuff. We partner with lots of different companies. We don't build our own servers. We don't have a server farm floating out in the middle of the Atlantic for mysterious purposes like Google does. We partner with companies for all kinds of things every day. And you're going to hear from companies today who partner with us. Companies like Matomi, companies like Microsoft. When one of the world's biggest software companies partners, it's a sign that there's really something there. And it gets back to the conversation we were having about core competency and about competitive differentiation. It's really just as important, absolutely as important, to know where not to invest and where to partner as it is in knowing where to invest. And I know everyone here is in some ways probably nodding their heads and saying, yeah, I get it, of course, partner for success. But I'd also point out that I think it's one of the weaknesses in our industry today is that we're not partnering that effectively in order to be able to tackle issues that affect all of us. Right? Take something like privacy. It's a big issue. Or take something like quality. Right? We've taken a very aggressive position at AppNexus about quality on our platform. But if bad actors just flow to other platforms in the ecosystem, are we really solving the problem as an industry? So it sort of reminds me of climate change, where there's no one country who can solve that problem individually. I really think it's the same for some of these industry problems. And I think if we look in the years ahead, partnering together to tackle those big challenges is going to be a skill that we're all going to have to learn to figure out, or someone's going to figure it out for us. And then the final of the great 8, build organizational muscles. And so what do I mean by that? I was talking with one of our clients the other night, and I said, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now as an organization? And he said, the biggest challenge is going from 30 to 300 people is like running a completely different business. We don't have the operational muscles yet to be able to operate at that scale. And I don't think that really can be taken for granted. When you're a young company, when you're 20 people or something like that, you can rely on heroic efforts by individuals to come in and solve a problem once. If you want to be a 300-person company or even larger, you need to be able to build muscles and muscle memory into your organization so that your organization can sustainably solve problem after problem after problem. And that's not an easy thing to do. You need great people. You need to invest in teamwork. You need to help people understand that just having a team there isn't the same as having a great team that works incredibly well together. And you need to be focused on it from an executive perspective. Otherwise, you're not going to develop the ability to scale your business past 30, let alone past 300, and into multiple business lines or anything like that. Okay. So I've just thrown the grade 8 out, but I want to give you an example of how we live these insights as well at AppNexus. I'm going to give a case study, share a case study with you about our investment in mobile. And so we started about a year ago trying to gather data and understand what was happening in the landscape. There were a lot of anecdotal conversations we were having with partners that were sort of keying us to the fact that we really needed to listen. Partners who were telling us, hey, you know, in 2011, maybe 10% of my traffic was mobile, and now it's looking more like 25%, and I'm afraid it might go to 50%. I mean, when you start hearing numbers and seeing things like that, it sort of signaled us that we needed to take a look. And we did some deep data analysis on the market, and we ended up basically coming to the conclusion that, shockingly, it was only going to be a short period of time before we were traditional media. I mean, the way we've all been thinking about traditional media for the last 10 years is that's print, that's the New York Times, that's newspapers and magazines and radio, et cetera. Well, that's not traditional media anymore. If you want to see traditional media now, you got to look at the people in this room, because we're the ones now who are going to have to adapt our businesses to a radically different medium and radically different consumer behavior. I think recently the IAB has produced some very interesting reports based on current success in the mobile market. And what it shows is, you could see the red bar, the mobile advertising space overtaking the display advertising space by 2017. That's pretty stunning. It's sort of that slow motion thing that we knew was coming, but now is actually happening. And so based on all of these insights, our conclusion is that where we are in this moment of the market is, years ago we all planted the seeds for programmatic, and today we've built fantastically big businesses, many of us here, and we are harvesting the benefits of those seeds we planted for years. Today is the opportunity to harvest those crops and to start planting seeds for the next wave of innovation and the next wave of the market. And at AppNexus, we think that there are a number of great areas to invest in, but sequencing matters a lot. And to the point I was mentioning before about inevitability, the next inevitability is mobile, and that's where our investment has gone. So what did we do? Well, we announced earlier this year that we were going all in on mobile. Making a public announcement as well as an internal announcement has a great way of galvanizing people toward a mission. And so that helped us to get the focus and the commitment from our organization that we were actually going to go do this. We sat down and made a really tough decision about how we wanted to structure our efforts. Did we want to do what Mark Zuckerberg did and said, everyone at AppNexus, we're going mobile first? Or did we want to create a crack team looking after our mobile efforts? We ended up doing the latter. We've dedicated a team of dozens of people for the entire year. All they did was focus on building our mobile capabilities into our AppNexus platform. That was the only thing they did. And we had big decisions to make around how we were going to manage that complexity. A lot of communication with our organization, a lot of communication with many of you in here about what that would mean and how we would manage that as a business. The communication requirements were probably twice what we would have expected in order to be able to make a transition like that. We failed fast. We went into beta. We did alphas before that, obviously. We got tons of feedback from our customers. We iterated rapidly while keeping our focus on the long term of being in a place today where we would have a really solid platform. And then we partnered. We didn't just work with our existing customers. We went and found the biggest company we could possibly find who complemented our position and could really help us and where we could help them. And we did a giant partnership, I think everyone knows, with Millennial Media. Paul will be speaking very shortly after this morning with Brian, telling you a little bit more about it. But that opportunity, I think, has the potential to be very transformative for both companies and for our entire ecosystem. And then finally, we built organizational muscles, including going out and hiring a star from the industry with great experience and just bringing an incredible amount of value to our company and this ecosystem, Ryan Christensen. And you're going to hear him speak right after me about the investments that we've made specifically in mobile. So this isn't just something that we talk about. This is something we've really lived. And we'll see how it goes. But from here, it looks like we really have the opportunity to build the leading mobile ecosystem and marketplace in the world sometime next year. And that's incredibly exciting. And the investments that we've made this year, the bets that we've made by going all in on 11, all in on mobile, are things that you could be taking advantage of as well as you plan the next phase of evolution for your businesses also. So, to conclude, here are the great 8. Do homework, focus wins, exit not greatness, understand adjacencies and inevitabilities, master complexity, fail fast, partner smart, and build organizational muscles. I hope that you've found something in here that might be able to help you as you think about 2014 and beyond. I'm personally really passionate about this stuff, and so as partners of ours, if I can ever be of help, or we can ever be of help to you as you think about your future plans, please let us know. Of course, we really hope to be a big part of those future plans of yours. And finally, I wish you and your businesses all the best and a little bit of luck. Thank you.